I think Councilman Jones is a little bit delayed. Is that, Jared, is that the deal? Councilman Jones is not coming, or is
He's running behind.
Huh?
He's running behind.
Okay.
How do you turn this off? Is there a power button or?
Exactly, that's what I was thinking too.
No, that's-
You're right here. Good to see you. We thought for a second that y'all weren't coming because you were sitting on that side and only the people in the view were here, but they got here early. But
Oh, that's what happened.
they moved all the seating arrangement. I have no idea. Mine was just here.
I just thought you were going to send an invoice to the county to rent the building for the meeting.
Well, Keith can take care of that if y'all got the funding.
Keith is my curb man right now. Leave him alone.
All right. Well, it's 3:02, so we'll get started. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the 2021 City Council, Escambia County Commission joint meeting. Mr. Mayor, welcome. It is May 17th. My understanding is we do have a hard stop at 5 o'clock. City Council has a shade meeting at 5:30 they need to get to. And so we will try to be judicious in our review of our items today. Usually we start off if there's any comments. I think I'm going to have one just to recognize Don Parker. I'm sure all of us have been on his show at one time or another and thought he always did a very fair job of getting the information out to the public. And we're thinking of him and his family and their loss on Pensacola's first radio station, as he always reminded me. But I would see if there's anybody else. We are, I guess we do also need to select a chair. I've just sort of kind of.
Yeah, I would move you. You've done well so
Okay,
far that
all
you
right.
just keep the reins and
Thank you.
gallop along.
You can be the chair, but remember, you do have a baseball game you got to
I do. Actually, Jared's in the game right behind us, so.
City could schedule you better. If you,
You thought the higher ranking team would have the preference of the time, but anyway, thank you everybody for being here. We had discussed in our review of this meeting that this is a city council workshop and also what we would consider as a committee of the whole. And so we are going to limit the discussion to the board members and council members and staff. And so we did do we have done our resolution for the joint workshop. And the first issue on the agenda is the Library Municipal Services Taxing Unit. Who's leading that?
Yeah, it was me touching
Yes,
the
Madam
microphone.
Administrator.
Yeah, I think what we wanted to clarify was that the interlocal agreement that was provided in July of 2013, there is a section in here where it says the city has authorized the inclusion of the corporate limits of the city of Pensacola as part of the geographical area of the MSTU for the purpose of funding the library services. And it's our understanding that we would need the city to, again, agree to being included as part of the MSTU to continue the funding for the library from the city.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor.
and again, I think that's, having been at the board when that decision was made, and I think it was probably, Doug, you and also, Stephen, you were also on there, yeah.
Yeah.
We made that determination. I thought that was one of the better moves for the library system, and certainly I think it's something that we should be looking to do. I think as we do that, though, I think we need to also clarify maybe some structural other issues that are in particular. I have no idea why the city wanted to keep the assets at the time, but I think it probably makes better sense for all of us to work as we're working to do the taxing unit, that this time we go around, we get the facilities to the proper owner and transition that as well. I know we've talked a little bit about that, Keith, with Janice and Robert, and just wanted to kind of make both boards aware of what we would want to do. But I think this is a good workable situation. It's a county-wide system. There are locations in the city and the county, and I think it works well. This is probably the better part for the library system, what we were able to do. But I think it would be better to get all the assets now under the system so it can operate properly.
And I don't know if, that was probably about the time that they were doing the renovations to the downtown library and acquiring the firehouse and expanding it, and that may have been a reason why. I'm not aware either, but.
Again, I don't know, but I would say at this time that begin to think that look at that possibility of doing that as we extend forward into another term of this.
And
So you own the asset, Grove. The city owns the asset, correct?
The city still owns the buildings, but you operate them, and it puts us in a very weird situation.
We pay for the insurance and for the maintenance. or-
we only cover contents. They cover the property insurance on the building themselves, and also capital improvements with those items that are over $5,000 or have a life expectancy greater than 5 years.
That's a good deal for us. Just leave it over there.
Second?
Is there, okay.
I think
Councilwoman Hill, okay. I'll just work around. Councilwoman Hill?
Isn't Legion Field Library also part of the library system?
Yeah, so the
It
three city properties are the Downtown Library on Spring Street, the Tryon Branch on Langley, and the Legion Field on West Gregory.
So you're saying we should give them Legion Field?
No, I
as well?
think that would be that would still be, that's not a self-contained, we do more than just the library there. So I think we would keep as a city facility. But those facilities that are truly only the library, I don't know what we necessarily benefit by keeping those facilities.
Well, I can say as councilperson in District 6, where the main library is, it's very much considered our library, and I would really hesitate giving it to the county.
I understand, and again, we already operate it and handle everything inside. It's just the four walls.
Right.
And again, referencing earlier that it was the old fire station.
Yes.
I could understand that, but, okay. Are there any other comments? Working away. Commissioner
Can I-
Underhill?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
And will you clarify your statement? You said your position was what? I know you
Not to
represent-
give the library to the county, the property itself.
Commissioner Underhill?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Certainly, Mr. Mayor, your logic makes sense, that those assets would make more sense shifted over so that it's one entity that's managing all of it. The obvious exception being Tryon, as we've already discussed, that would probably end up being like a lease agreement. I'm sorry.
Not trying, nay.
So that would be essentially a lease agreement
Yeah.
between the library system and the city for that space, and that's easily done. The question that I have, though, is what is the financial impact? How do you have the numbers for what the city has paid over the, annually?
We can certainly get into that. I know that there's some maintenance that we were working through. I know we had some things after the storm. Keith, if you have any details on what we had, but I think we've done most of the hurricane repairs. We've gotten that repaired.
We have it, main expense was the chillers at the main library, and that was all covered through FEMA. Any other, I think there are some other issues at the main street library that we need to, or at the Spring Street branch, we need to work out. I think there's some issues with the windows, but as far as any other damages go, or maintenance issues, or expenditures, say, out of our general fund, I don't know of any.
Okay.
I'll confirm that.
And that's, Administrator, I recognize that obviously solving the problems that you've got, that's one part of the equation, but really, the question is, what is the annual hit to the library's budget, and then where do we come up with that? If it's minuscule, and there's greater value that we're going to have by bringing all those assets together, then that makes perfectly good sense. But again, I'd want to see those numbers and know what they are, because as we are expanding the library system, particularly out of Jeff's district, getting the first library in District 1, we have to be cognizant of where those county dollars are going for the growth that we're experiencing, particularly, northwest and north sectors. So I'd hate to constrain that growth as we take on those assets that, according to the agreement, were not to be on our budget. So
I would say the only thing is, though, in having our citizens also taxed for the MSTU, that we need to make sure the city assets we're all paying for the right thing. The right
Yeah.
system's paying for the right part.
No, and I'm wide open to hearing that discussion. I really would like to see those numbers, though, and that would be, that's really where my, looking at how that would impact our plans for the program writ large around the county would be where my interest would go. And then, again, if there's still, some of that sort of non-tangible connectivity that people have because of the city ownership of the asset, while that certainly doesn't necessarily affect my constituents, I'm very cognizant of the fact that that's very important to constituents. So, I mean, I wouldn't want to step on those toes, for the sake of being a little bit more efficient. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, I think our biggest expense, for the most part, would then be the insurance on the buildings, which the city currently has, and then having to do the capital improvement projects that are being handled right now, so.
So, Madam Administrator and Mr. Administrator, how hard would it be to put together kind of what that financial impact would be and get that back to us for decision-making? I mean, I would assume that putting those 2 additional buildings on our insurance policy is probably a blip on the radar at best.
It's I think it's a couple $1 million for the Spring Street Library.
Okay,
Uh,
again,
so-
assumptions being what they
right.
are. I don't want to make decisions on
The
assumptions.
valuation or the premium?
That won't be
Evaluation.
difficult, and we'll provide you those numbers.
Okay, because you'll see what that's going to look like as a financial impact to us long-term. I think that's a critical part of the decision.
Certainly.
And
Thank you.
then I guess our next steps would be that we move this to a committee of the whole with that information, and the city move to a workshop. Yes, ma'am.
So first off, the property on the Tryon, would we maintain the park there?
The park would still be ours.
Okay, that's the first question. The second question here is, I think that what I'm getting feedback from my constituents today about this meeting altogether is that they're looking for us working together more, not less. They like these interlocal agreements, and they like seeing us come together and pull together things together. So I don't think they're looking necessarily for us to separate. It's on the contrary, just as a consideration as we move forward as well. They want to see more of this, is what I gather today.
And I agree with you. I mean, as someone who has 60% of their district in the city,
Right.
or made up of the city, including all of yours, I think we have a good working relationship, and I agree that everyone wants to see that. I think what we're looking at is more of financial sense for the city. If they're not operating anything that's within it, it's all under one roof, then is it worthwhile for the city to continue to just own and maintain the building? But I think that we've worked well together these last few months with all the calls that we have with the hospitals and everything that we're trying to move the community forward. So I am not looking to break us further apart, but if it takes something off your plate to where you're, I mean, even after the hurricane, we were ready to go replace the chiller before I was like, wait, that's a city building, and it could have gotten sideways with some of the stuff we were doing. So if it streamlines it and makes it better for everybody, then, but yes, I don't want to see us pulled apart, so.
Councilman Wiggins.
I saw Councilwoman Myers and then Councilman Wiggins. Thank you.
Well, one issue that I noticed reading through here is that it appears that the city maintains all of the grounds around Tryon Library, which is like commingled with Bryan Park. So is the county reimbursing, I mean, how does that, how do we break that up? Because they're reimbursing us $850 a month. So what part of it is Tryon Library and which part of it is Bryan Park?
What we were discussing is the buildings and the facilities. We would not do the park. The park is still ours, and we basically program out of the park. But again, what is generally viewed as the operation of the county is the building, and put the more, I would say, our citizens are certainly, Escambia County citizens by this action are paying for the library, being taxed on it and paying for it, as they should be, and I think it's all the good thing for the system. I don't think they should be taxed again to deal with the maintenance, when the maintenance should just be part of the library system. And the library system should take care of those buildings that it's in, and that would be, we can put together the financial impact of what rent is collected and what the expenses are, and we can show that what's there. But at the end of the day, I think that is us working together to make sure it's properly functioned. And I think what has happened with the transfer from the city to the county of the library has been a phenomenal success for everyone. The biggest winner is the citizens that get a better expanded library system that's more functional and able to have, rather than having redcoats come in, or you remember the days when we had that every single budget hearing. We don't have that. We have a funded library system that can make itself work.
Well, and I agree with everything you just said. What I'm just wondering about, because this issue's come up recently, if they're reimbursing us $850 a month for keeping the grounds up at Tryon Library, that's trees and vegetation and all of that. So what I'm wondering about is what part of that Bryan Park is Tryon Library? I'm just trying,
We can get with Brian Cooper. I can have all that. I think that's what Commissioner Underhill was asking for, is kind of a detailed, this is conceptual idea. The details of what's there and what's being taken care of, we can get that information.
And the reason I would like maybe that amended and a little bit of clarification, remember about a week ago, we had a lot of confusion from a lady who wanted, the League of Women Voters, who kept saying they wanted to plant a tree at Tryon Library, and I kept saying, do you mean Bryan Park?
Yes. No. We,
Oh, and again,
That's why.
we even got, our administrator got confused and gave the wrong answer, but he admitted he gave the wrong answer. But,
He may not have. That's why I'm bringing this paragraph to your attention.
I think all of that should be cleaned up, and that's all I'm saying. If we go through a second phase of this, and I think it is the best thing for the citizens, the best thing for the library, but I think if we do that, we need to clean it up a little bit.
and just for clarification, it does say that it's just an amount not to exceed $850. And with that being said, I would have a little bit of an issue if we're paying the city to maintain a city park right now.
Exactly. That's
So,
another reason.
anyway, Councilman Wiggins.
Just a quick question. What are we currently paying in taxes now?
The tax rate
Yeah, what are we
for
paying in
for the MSTU, Ms. Gilly, do you
I
have?
had it with me. I didn't bring it. I'll look it up.
It's a countywide rate. It's the same rate for the millage all over.
We'll get that to you. Are you pulling up your text? Okay. Commissioner Burgash?
Just a couple of things. First, from the county, Janice, when we go ahead and workshop this, if you could just bring the three scenarios, if we stayed status quo, if we did what the city's bringing forward, or if we, I want to see the before and after, what it's going to cost the county. And also, I'd like to know what the Library Board of Governance has to say about this. I know after building the Bellevue Library, they're going to be tapped out to a point where I had to put in about $200,000 of my discretionary to help get that project over the line. Now, part of that was increased construction costs, which we all understand, but it's not like they're swimming in money. So I'd like to hear from them as well at our county workshop. Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And the current rate is .359.
Okay.
Thanks. Commissioner Berry?
Thank you, Robert. I don't necessarily have an issue with it. I would ask, for our scheduling purposes, will you let the Board of Governors meet about it and give their feedback, and let the City Council take action and deal with theirs before you bring it to us?
Yes. And actually, that was, I was not able to pull up the composition of that board. Does the city have members of that board on there? I'm seeing North, okay. So I don't know if that would, if we keep it in that structure, or if we restructure it. But
Just
I'd
to
be
ask,
fine.
just to answer Councilman Wiggins' question, so the budget is about 7.1 million, and our collections run very close to 100%. So for example, last year, our budget was 6.64 million, and our collections were 6.4 in receipts. So the budget is very close to the 100%.
As long as they're paying MSTU, I don't have an issue with them, continuing to have seats on the Board of Governors. But I don't want us to spend a lot, from my point of view, I don't want us to spend a lot of time with our board talking about it and then have it not go somewhere else. So
Sure.
if we might let the other parties before it comes to us.
Okay, Madam Administrator, and I don't know if Todd's here, but,
Kimberly's here, Todd is not available today.
okay, great. So when they next meet as scheduled, we can have them discuss that if we have the relevant information.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I concur with my colleague, Commissioner Berry, because my city council representative that represents me very well has spoken of her position. Our position will be a reactionary position because if they decide not to pursue the lease, we're going to provide a library service. So quite frankly, it's in the hands of the city council. And if they decide that they no longer want to maintain it, we have an option to continue library services or not do library services. So it's not a huge discussion for the county commissioners once the city council makes a decision. So
Yes, sir.
I concur with my.
Yes, sir. Any other discussion on that topic? Yes, sir.
Commissioner Burgash, I don't think the city was looking for the county to pay any money for it. They're all part of the we're all in the effort together. So the issue is more making sure that the entity that is collecting the tax on it is the one that's actually paying for the maintenance and everything else.
But, and I understand what you're saying, but look also to their budget realities. You heard what she just said, what they collect and what their budget is. So if we dump a whole lot of new maintenance responsibility on them, it's going to be an issue. Again, to fully fund the construction of the latest library, it took hundreds of thousands of dollars from the county to make it happen and get it over the line from my discretionary funds.
Yes, sir.
Hundreds of thousands.
And Commissioner Box, you're absolutely right, but the reality of where we are, I mean, we could swap spit, for another 2 hours, but if they decide not to let us lease the building, then we would end up finding another building to provide library services.
We'll cross that bridge.
Yeah, right, and so, I mean, that's why I say it's not really I agree with Commissioner Berry. I don't want to waste a committee of the whole time until the city council makes a decision.
I agree.
All right. Council President Moore, did you have something? Okay. All right, moving on to the next topic. Homelessness.
Committee Chair, Mayor Grover Robinson, and committee members, what we'd like to do now is to take a moment and have an informational share, which I call a three-dimensional informational share, from John Johnson, Director of Open Doors, Connie Bookman, CEO of Pathway for Change, collaborating in a newly formed organization called Homeless Reduction Task Force Northwest Florida. And then after which, we're going to ask Dr. Robert Mulbert to come up and give you kind of an executive summary of some of the activities and coordination that has been going on in the area of homeless mitigation for the city of Pensacola and the county. So at this time, in the order of Mr. John Johnson, followed by Connie Bookman, and then Dr. Robert Mulbert.
Thank you, Mr. Powell.
Good afternoon, all. Again, John Johnson with Opening Doors, Northwest Florida. I don't think anyone here is unaware of the plight of homelessness. But statistically, prior to COVID, we were going down in our numbers. And then obviously COVID caused a spike. I won't get into prevention of homelessness because that's a whole nother topic. But we do a lot to address those who may slip into homelessness without some sort of intervention. That said, I'll move on to homelessness. This last year in January, we conducted a census count just to see what the homeless numbers look like, and it was just north of 800 homeless people. Traditionally, we do face-to-face interviews through a survey that is pretty intensive to validate whether or not someone is homeless. But this time we did a visible count where we hit the streets to really look at those on the street corners and different places. And I can tell you, for the county, District 2 has the highest presence, and I want to say District 5 in the city has the highest presence of homelessness. We also did a count, a sporadic count in September, October, and December. We took about an hour and a half of the day on each one of those days in the months to just get a count of the visible homeless. The first time it was just under 300. The second time it was around in the mid 200s, and the third time it was just a little north of 400 visible homeless people. The impact of COVID and what we're seeing now is that there is this precursor, there's this transition that we're seeing when it comes to prevention. The moratorium on evictions helped us in a big way. It staved off so many people from slipping into homelessness. But now those moratoriums, those eviction processes have been lifted, and now we're seeing more visible homeless. And this time it's targeting those families, kids. And so here we're left with this erosion of the availability of rentals where landlords and such will rent to this population of people impacted by homelessness. So this is those folks that are affected by COVID, whether they lost their jobs or not, and their inability to be able to really stabilize. So it's hard for us to come across the availability of rentals in order to rapidly move people from the streets to housing. This crisis has culminated over the past year, and we have really reached this place of crisis. That said, I met with Connie and others to talk about what we can do in the interim to address this homeless crisis. We've also seen, because of COVID, some of our shelter agencies have minimized the number of people they can see, and some have closed altogether. The availability of shelters to serve families have been so significantly reduced that my organization has moved to placing people in hotels. And you might believe that putting them in a hotel is a great option. Well, just Friday, we've seen a seasonal change and an adjustment to what would normally substantiate us and our ability to be able to help them go from $50 to $200 a night. So we have so many homeless families, so many individuals. We're seeing a sicker population of people, not just the mentally ill, and that is ever present, but those that have physical impediments, that are physically sick, and those that are stable enough to be discharged from the hospital. And so that means, okay, where do we put them? We've seen Waterfront reduce its capacity because of Sally, as well as COVID. And part of some of the relief that we're getting as a continuum of care, for which Opening Doors is the lead agency for federal and state funds, is that we're going to be receiving $3.5 million. And of that $3.5 million, we're going to dedicate just over $600,000 to stand up 2 emergency shelters. That is Bright Bridge, it's called His Place, and then we're going to be partnering with REAP to stand up Salvation Army. And this will be sort of a Band-Aid in order to help some of the blight that you see with our very present homeless population, to help ease the burden that really has been shouldered by the Waterfront Rescue Mission. So with these agencies standing up to address this shelter, this is a good use of our funds to target our men and women who are homeless when it comes to mental illness. And when it comes to the substantial change in, men versus women, when it comes to homelessness, we've seen an increase in homeless men and a decrease in homeless women. Yet we don't have the shelter capacity to shelter our homeless women. We have an agency that targets, her foundation, she targets veterans, but when it comes to single women, we're really at a loss. And so again, my go-to is to put them up in a hotel. But again, the cost of hotels has increasingly risen. So this homeless reduction task force, I want to yield my time to Connie so that she can come up here and talk about the homeless reduction task force. But before I go, are there any questions for me that I may answer? Yes, Councilman.
What would be the total once you get the Salvation Army and the Bright Bridge back together? How many people will you be able to?
We're looking at their ability to social distance because that would still be a factor. But I'm thinking, Councilwoman Hill, about 100 to 150.
And you're saying there's how many out there? What percentage would that be?
There are, when it comes to homeless men, our homeless numbers are 75% men and 25% women.
Commissioner Underhill?
You stated earlier in your comments that your nightly cost has gone up to $200 a night. The facilities that you're providing for that, that's a significantly higher rate than the average daily rate for Escambia County. Are there only certain places that you can go that you're paying that? Most of our lower cost hotels in the county are considerably less than that.
That's right. But this past week, Commissioner Underhill, we've been trying to house families. Most of them have been booked, and their rates have been right at the $200 average daily night.
Councilwoman Myers?
Yes, thank you. Well, I think I can personally vouch for what you're saying about the hotel rates, because I had been checking hotel rates for family members who, want to come to this area, especially around the 4th of July. And so it's amazing how high the hotel rates have gone up so quickly. But what I did have a hotelier tell me was to check back closer to the 4th of July. And for some reason, I guess the prices are higher now because people anticipate that a lot of people will make reservations around these holidays. If they don't get the reservations they expect, they're telling me to check back closer to the 4th of July, the rates will have gone down. That's just a few of the hotels I've talked to. But it is a fact, from what I've been able to ascertain, is that the hotel rates have gone up quite a bit. So that's not surprising. But I wanted to ask you about the numbers that you talk about when you do your survey. You keep mentioning the word visible. So when you do your survey, I know that there are a lot of homeless people who are not visible. There are people who live in cars. There are a lot of people who live in cars.
Yes.
And so those people are not going to be very visible.
I believe our numbers, Councilman,
Pardon?
are underreported.
Okay. I am seeing more and more homeless camps in District 2 and getting more and more complaints about large homeless camps in any wooded area that people can find to camp in. And I'm seeing more people sleeping in cars and some people just sleeping at the shopping malls when they're closed. So what I want to know is, you know, when you're homeless, when you're poor and you don't have transportation, it's good to be in places where there's stores, there's transportations, and there's resources. So I'm concerned about all of the money, and I think there should be millions more coming through CARES Act and so forth. I just don't feel that it's being spent, distributed throughout the county, and especially in the area, in the Cordova Mall, that whole area up and down 9th Avenue. Can you maybe address that concern that I have? Or is it just a perception and not a reality?
No, I won't disregard what you're saying. I will say this, that as a COC lead, our charge is for both Escambia and Santa Rosa County. And the distribution of the funds that we receive supposed to be distributed where there are higher pockets of homelessness. The part of the reason why we wanted to put more money in emergency shelter was because of the fact that Waterfront reduced the number of people that they can serve. And and on top of that, they eliminated for now their day resource services, which would have given those kind of walking homeless an opportunity and a place to go. And so you're seeing an increase in the presence of homelessness in camps and other places like that because we haven't had options in the past. Mm-hmm. And so at least standing up these two providers will give them an opportunity to come off the streets where they can get more intensive kinds of services.
Councilwoman Broughton.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. You mentioned in the city that you noticed a lot of people experiencing homelessness in District 5. Where, in what part of District 5 would you state is the highest?
And I might be wrong, but District 5 is the downtown area, right? Is that right?
6.
That's
And a little bit of
6? Okay, so it's the downtown area, District 6 then.
Councilwoman Breyer.
Do you have, as a joint group that you have before you right here, is there one thing that you think would most affect change that we could help you with? I mean, financially, I know it's more difficult for us, but I mean, is there something that we can tackle here that will?
So I've got about 5 things, but I'll just say one that is consistent for both the city and the county. I would say one thing that both the city and the county could do is, on the city side, you guys have the Section 8 vouchers, okay? And in the past, HUD has always said that, at least in the past 5 years, designate your vouchers for your special needs population, which in this case would be the homeless. Now, on the county side, the Public Housing Authority, ran by Area Housing Commission, has project-based housing. And again, HUD has suggested and encouraged continuums of care to look to their public housing authorities to designate project-based beds to the homeless. In this particular situation where we can use project-based, where there are 2 bedrooms, we can get 2 guys or 2 gals to partner together to move in. They would share in the lease, share in utilities. It's affordable for them, particularly those that are on fixed income. And most Social Security checks are around $776 a month. And this would be something that would be affordable to both of them. So that would be the rising thing that I would say that is within your authority to do, and that is to designate the Section 8 vouchers, a few of those vouchers, to the homeless, and designate project-based housing to the homeless.
Thank you.
Commissioner Underhill.
Thank you. Actually following up on what Councilwoman Rutten said, that you've referenced a document, the point-in-time study that's recently completed. I'm looking for my copy of it. I don't see that. Was that something that was put out to us, or if it's not, it doesn't, I mean, if it's not, if I could have a copy of it, I'd like to.
It's due to the state tomorrow. We've been given an extension. So it's not published yet.
Okay, so it'll be published tomorrow then?
It'll be published tomorrow.
Outstanding. I'd like to get a copy of that. As you mentioned, that if in fact District 2 is the county is the highest population, that would be a change from the last time. So I'd like to have a look at that and see where that trend is happening. So love to get a copy of that. Thank you.
And just a quick comment, I would agree that I think the visible numbers are very low compared to what we feel the actual numbers are.
Yeah, we've always known that.
Yeah, of course, Councilman Wiggins?
Just a quick question. I know we're talking about housing, but the ones that we currently have housed, how many do we have? And also, are we working to try to find them some type of employment?
How many do we have housed?
Mhm.
Like homeless people
Homeless.
housed?
In facilities?
Shelters. The ones that are sheltered?
Right.
Okay. Currently, Waterfront's capacity is right around 50. And they're the biggest men's shelter. I do know that they are moving to, and that they've already started a recovery program there at the Mission. And I believe that one is about 15 homeless men, I believe. I would get the statistics from them, but I think their capacity right now is about 50. And that's due to salary recovery as well as attempting to maintain social distancing.
So are we working to try to find them employment to try to get them out of that situation?
Waterfront they have and I really don't feel comfortable speaking for them in terms of what they're doing as a shelter, but we go to them once a week to help men and women, or men, get Social Security, as well as IDs and birth certificates and things of that nature. There are some case management that we do with them on a weekly basis. But we've deployed a mobile unit to really target those unsheltered folks who can't get to our facility. We go and we meet with them to help them. I want to say to date, we've moved about 20 people from the Hollis Bridge into housing. And we had about 3 go to jail as a result of being housed. And as we move people, there are more that seems to come to the Hollis. So to your point about getting jobs and things of that nature, our main primary concern is to make sure they get housing.
Councilman, I know when we toured the Kearney Center in Tallahassee that does shelter and resources, they said if they had one thing to change, they would double the amount of space that they've dedicated to resources and getting people those Social Security, finding them jobs, things like that. So I know you've been over there as well. I think that, and I really think that's the key, is to provide resources to help people get back on their feet, to find a job, to get their documents that they need to start collecting their check or whatever. That's probably the big step, and then the other step is also the housing side of it. So I'll be making my rounds. Commissioner May.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. John, thank you for your presentation. And just a couple quick questions. We all understand that homelessness is the end result of a systemic problem, whether it be drug addiction, alcoholism, discrimination, and that those people who find themselves in those predicaments need programming or reprogramming. And so in these shelters that you're standing up, what programs are you standing up within these shelters?
Some of the REAP will be standing up job opportunities. One of the things that we did with REAP that we didn't do with Wright Bridge is that we've given REAP some additional funding for rapid rehousing. So as those guys go through the emergency shelter, they'll have dollars available to pay the first month's rent deposit, and even in some cases, pay the rent up to 6 months. So built into their process, they have job readiness. And they've been pretty good about helping those who are coming out of the reentry back into society to get jobs. And so that part won't change in terms of what they're doing. Now, as far as Brightbridge is concerned, coordinated entry is critical. And to Councilman Wiggins' point, it brings together opportunities where if you place somebody in an emergency shelter, you should be working on discharge right away. A discharge that has a plan for housing success. In many cases, to get someone a job without the housing, it will create an instability. And so housing is always critical first, and then you get them the job, because then they have a resting place in order to work from.
And certainly understand that, Mr. Johnson. So have we established an overall city and county goal with measurable inputs so we can, as a body, look at the outcomes and analyze those and say, as a county, in our coalition of the homeless in our city, in our county, these are the goals that we're trying to achieve?
I can speak to some of those now, but I don't want to steal comments.
I was going to say, I think Councilwoman Hill, you may have a quick question. Councilwoman, if we have two more presenters on this topic, and I want to make sure we get through them, so if you think that could be answered.
Well, no, that was very simple to me. It was yes or no, Mr.
Okay.
Chairman. I mean, do we have goals? I mean, I don't need
Yes.
I don't need a dissertation. Yeah.
Right.
Yes, Commissioner.
Okay. Councilwoman Hill, your question real quick?
Okay, my quick question is, I have understood with Section 8 housing that the landlords have the ability not to accept Section 8. Is that correct?
Correct.
I also understand it's possible to pass a policy where landlords would not be able to discriminate against Section 8 voucher holders. Do you see that as preferential in this county or not?
I can't speak to that, Councilwoman Hill. I think that would be a Marcy Whitaker.
Okay.
I think she could
I
answer
saw
that.
Ms. Reeves is in the audience.
And to your point, Commissioner Mayor, while we're waiting, is going to be looking at reductions to ER visits, reduction in interactions with law enforcement. So those are going to be some of the goals that I can think of off the top of my head.
All right. Ms. Bookman, do you mind if, you'll be first on that after Ms. Bookman talks, or do you? Okay, go ahead.
Could I get the answer to?
Yeah, I'll get your, yes, ma'am, I'll get your.
Quick questions about population. How many are children and how many are actual residents of the city of county?
Okay, so the short answer on children, there are approximately 2,500 homeless children in Escambia County.
Meredith, are you able to give me a yes, no on if
Thank you.
we can pass something that says they can't discriminate against the vouchers?
I'm not the Section 8 expert since I'm not the administrator, but that would probably be something for the city to discuss and the county to discuss. I mean.
Okay, do we have someone from the city that can answer that?
Is Marcy here?
Marcy, are you here? Okay. Right.
Couldn't see you that far back, sorry about that. Kind of hiding behind the flag almost.
It was. Oh, so you were asking about the source of income?
Section 8, whether if we require, they can't discriminate against Section 8 voucher holders, landlords? Is that understood?
Yeah, right. Basically, nationally, that's called a source of income ordinance, and they do it under the fair housing is how they've done it. And Councilwoman and I have spoken about this in the past, and I've also talked with the city legal department. For Section 8 as a whole, 20% of our vouchers are used within the city, and 80% are used within the county. So it would almost have to be something, if it's something the community as a whole wanted to pursue, it would have to be done probably at the county level, and then the city also adopt an ordinance similar to that.
And would you like that to be passed, or would it help as far as housing people?
It's been proven in other jurisdictions where they've done that it has helped.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Bookman?
Thank you.
Thank you, and good afternoon. Connie Bookman with Pathways for Change. So John Johnson was kind enough to want to allow me some of his time, and I'm here to tell you that you have an expert, Dr. Robert Marbut, in the room. He was the homeless czar for the last 2 presidents. He has his recommendations and some suggestions for you all that I'm just in awe of this man and his work for a lifetime and what he's going to offer you today. So we are right in the weeds of all of this. You know, homelessness is a humongous problem. As Commissioner May said, you know, programming is so important. Well, if you look at your goals, mission and goals that's in your packet, it's going to talk about the work of the task force, and I'm just going to spend a couple minutes just praising the people that are already involved, over 150 people on the task force. We launched our first meeting May 26th through June 14th. All 6 working subcommittees will have their first meetings, and then we have an advisory committee that will be meeting in September and quarterly after that to help us. That's who I call the Godfather, Godmother group that will be able to open doors for us when we're up against some challenges. But just to say, if you will look at your subcommittees, co-chairs and goals, I mean, what a miracle that Meredith Reeves, Division Manager, Neighborhood Enterprise Division of Escambia County, and Marcy Whitaker, Director of Housing, said that they are going to they're dedicating a year. This is a 3-year initiative, so I'm not going to let them off the hook, but I accepted just the 1-year commitment from them. But they are going to, and you've got their goals. You can read, I want you to read this later because I really want you to hear Dr. Marbut. But just so grateful for these 2 brilliant women that have been so invested in our city and county to lead this subcommittee, bringing all interested people into the room, talking about funding, what is coming down into Escambia and into our city, and different ways that we can make proposals to you all of how we can best spend that money with the experts in the room. It's going to be so exciting. Healthcare, you have Chandra Smiley, you all know her, Executive Officer of Community Health, and Jules with Sacred Heart. I always say her name wrong, so you can read it there. With Sacred Heart System, the 2 of them work so closely together. They know the population, the homeless population, and they are leading that. Again, bringing stakeholders into the room, saying, taking an inventory. What do we provide now? And what are the gaps? What can we get creative? And how can we find the funds? Not necessarily from you, but from higher sources to change the healthcare system and any patchwork of services in all of these 6 different areas. Again, employment, workforce development, education, Marcus McBride with CareerSource and Jesse Wolf with George Stone leading this group. What do we provide? What are the obstacles for people living in poverty to have the training that they need to be employed? Mental health, addiction, case management. Laura Gilliam comes from West Virginia. She's the CEO of United Way of West Florida. She understands the opiate and the meth crisis, the worst in our nation there in West Virginia. She understands the COC. She knows how to work with John Johnson. And then, of course, Dr. Irv Williams, one of my favorite people on the planet, who's been with Lakeview for 40 years. The 2 of them leading this task force. What do we provide now in mental health, addiction, and case management, and what are the gaps? How are we going to, when Connie Bookman adopts a woman under the Pensacola Beach Bridge on New Year's Eve, and I try to maneuver the system over 2 months, and I ended up losing this woman who went back into addiction because I couldn't find her a bed. And all the doors that I can open for being in this position for 40 years in our community, if I can't do it, then there's some real problems. So, of course, we are going to be addressing all of that. Legal services, criminal justice, the problem-solving courts, the specialty courts. You know, Erica Quartermain is from Pensacola. She's the judge in Sarasota, and she has been mentoring us in ways that Sarasota came from being the meanest city in the nation to the most problem-solving, supportive city in our nation as far as homeless services. So Allison Patton, who's a retired attorney, lives downtown, and she's a property owner. And then Ronnie Rivera with the East Gambia Sheriff's Office will be leading that group. One of my favorite, they're all my favorites. I guess it's not fair saying if you have children, who's your favorite. But I think this subcommittee I'm about to describe really is going to be the one that's going to gel all of the other 5 working subcommittees. It's our faith-based organization, food programs, transportation, and mentoring. So Ashley Wilkinson Meyer was associate pastor, and she's moving into her role as director of United Ministries, which is amazing. And then Jennifer Tompkins, a warrior for the homeless in our community, working at the Epps Christian Center, had a wonderful Zoom with them, just finishing out last touches for their charter this morning. But this is the group that will create that relationship with people in homelessness, building a trusting relationship, helping them get to work in school, letting them know they're a support system. What are you going to do for your children to make sure they get to school or work? That's what faith-based organizations are going to wrap their heads around. How can we be of service? And then finally, John Johnson and I will be overseeing all of the subcommittees and then working with that Godfather, Godmother group. So any 1,000-foot questions you might have.
I do want to go ahead and get Dr. Marbut up and listen to his recommendations. And maybe just stay close, as I know we do have some questions.
Okay.
But also want to be mindful of our time, especially as I think some of these other topics that we have later on, as Councilwoman Brager said, it gives us an opportunity to work together. So, yes, sir, Dr. Marbut, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much, and I'm going to move very, very quick. First off, I love this community. I've been coming here since, I'm going to date myself, 1967, with my family from Tallahassee, so this is where we came for vacation almost every summer. And then when I was building Haven for Hope in San Antonio, I came and spent some time touring some of your facilities. Then later in 2014, I worked with John on several different, sort of an analysis, sort of see where things are. And then over that time, I've come here through the last 2 administrations on homelessness, and then have been working on this study that we'll be releasing next week. And so the timing of this meeting, the mayor mentioned, be a good time to give you a quick preview. We're not finalized yet, but we're about ready to be. A couple things to sort of tie up some things. The report I'm working on is what some of you have been saying, visual homelessness. Technically, that would be called unsheltered homelessness, the way the HUD administration, sometimes I'll refer to it as street homelessness. And so that's different than Department of Education's children homelessness. That's a whole different ballgame. Then you have some people that are experiencing homelessness that are in some sort of mitigation or getting help now, and that's another group. And so at a point in time, we'll take, generally, the point in time count looks at the adults, either unsheltered or emergency sheltered. They don't take a look at the children. So they're, to give you an idea. So the report we're working on here and what we're looking on is what we call unsheltered or street level people experiencing homelessness.
And as a real quick intro, I've been working on homeless for about 35 years, working for 3 different presidential administrations, and I've been to about 1,200 locations in all 50 states, plus Mexico and a little bit of work in Canada. And there's a tendency in these endeavors to talk about what's going bad, so I want to talk real quickly about a couple things that are going good. Having Connie and John as these co-chairs of this work group and what they've done to lay that groundwork so thoroughly is going to be an amazing asset to you, an amazing tool and work group to harness everybody together. Because when we were here in 2014, the number one problem was everybody's going different directions. It was very unorganized, people going different directions, so you're much more cohesive than you were in 2014. So that's a real big one. And then the leadership of John and Connie is your next big strength. And those are the two great things you have, because candidly, what you're facing is really dramatic. And I've even noticed it in the last 90 days here. I noticed when I came down in administration during COVID, and I've seen just in the last 2 years real changes. But some of your changes you're seeing is because unique to Pensacola and the community in the county area, but some of it is unique to Florida or anywhere in the more warmer climates across the country. So let me go through and talk real quickly about why I think the other day somebody asked, how would you define where you're at? And I said, you're at the edge of a crisis, about ready to go over the hill. I mean, you're at 50 miles an hour aiming for the cliff right now. That's where they are. You've had a murder in 2019, December of 2019, down at the end of Halifax, down at the pier. And what was the other day when I was here, I said, I'd like to go see where that murder occurred, how it occurred, to better understand it. Is it a trend thing? Is it a one-off? So I go down, and the lady that Allison is touring me around says, well, what's really strange is 3 weeks ago we had a robbery right here at 8:30 in the morning, just 10, 15 feet away where the murder happened. And so your violence and aggressivity is significantly going up. Your overall numbers are going up. I mean, that's a big thing. And again, I'm talking about unsheltered numbers. Part of that is interconnected to COVID. Part of that is other trends that are Florida trends. And some of this is because of what's going on here. But your numbers are dramatically going up. I've noticed an increase in just the last 90 days while I've been on this project. I've been in town about 21 of those days, and I'm seeing it going up. The areas of real concern I have are, one is when the railroad track, when I was here in 2014, 2015, railroad track had very thin amount of encampments through there. Now the encampments go maybe 2 miles along the track and are filling up. When they hit a saturation level, that will start to bleed into the communities. So your numbers are getting bigger. You see it at corners. This morning I went to a barber shop, and right on the connection I walked in, the lady giving me the haircut said, why are you here? I said, homeless. She said, oh, I gotta tell you a story. Police were just in. We had a person came in, very disruptive, and she says, and it was an area that there's normally not a lot of people experience homelessness. So as I left at 9:30 this morning, one intersection going east had 4 people on 4 corners, and then the other intersection going west had 3 out of the 4 corners. And what you know is when you get saturation at corners, it's like elbow room, you're in my territory, and so the aggressivity things go up and such like that. You're starting to see many more police reports to stabbings. The stabbings are what you don't see a lot of guns in homelessness. It's partly because it's too expensive to keep, ammo's very expensive, but knives, when a community starts to become more violent, you start to see an increase in knives is what you see on the street. And when I look at 3 leading indicators of violence, and because we know what the numbers are, you can look out the window, is it going down or is it going up? But violence is when it gets really bad, because that's bad at the human level, it's bad at the criminal justice level, it's bad at the EMS fire department level, it's bad at the ER level. So it starts to become a very expensive ricocheting event. And there are 3 indicators I always look for. One is the ratio of men to women in encampments. The more women you have in an encampment, the safer an encampment is. The less women you have in an encampment, the more violent it is. And so if you watch what's happening there, just in the last 90 days, you've seen a shift, and many of the providers, I've asked them the same question, and they think the women dropping encampments have dropped about 5 percentage points. So that's a leading indicator. It's not because the women are keeping the violence down or the men are causing it. The women leave the encampments when the encampments get too violent and too much, sexual assault type of stuff, stabbings. And so you're seeing a trend where the women are going down, men are going up. So that's your first trend you'll see. The second trend you see when you start to see violence is the number of dogs. More people have dogs in an encampment. That's like the alarm system, it's the safety net, it's the security. And so when you see little dogs that are sort of, more of the terrier, 15, 20 pound, it's sort of the alarm system for you. So when you start to see the amount of dogs go up, violence is coming. And then your final stage, this is when you're now past being able to control it, is when the dogs go from defensive small dogs to 40 pound, 50 pound, sort of, American Terrier, Pit Bull, Husky, and when, bigger, larger dogs. And when you see that, that's when you're in an offensive, violent encampment. And at that point, I don't want to say it's too late to undo it, but you're almost too late to undo it and such. The other way you need to think about this is the community of homelessness that is from your community, went to high school here, family here, worked here. John laid out really good the housing future and what's going to happen when foreclosures start and evictions start picking up. When those moratoriums go, you're going to have that. That is your local community. The other thing you have to always think about is how many people are coming into your community. That's a different group. And at a clinical level, these groups really do need to be worked with differently. Homegrown, there's nowhere else for those individuals to go, so you really have to help them with deep, rich services. Out-of-town people, the worst place for their recovery is here because they have better chance of recovering at a higher rate where their family network is, where they know people are from. So you want people from out of town, you need folks like that to move back to their home nurturing network, and they'll have a higher chance. So it's not Greyhound therapy, and there's a lot of details of how you do it, but it has to be very, very nurturing and warm handoffs and such, because if you just send somebody back on a Greyhound, they'll move right back because this is the place they know. So you want them to be successful at the other location. The one caveat there is domestic violence. Sending a person back with domestic violence could be a death sentence. So you don't, what I just described, don't do for domestic violence. That's a sort of separate issue. And real quickly, I'll go through, there's 7 recs that it looks like, we still got a week to go on the report, but we have 7 recommendations. I'll go through them real quick. One is you have to move from a culture of enablement to engagement. You need to engage people into recovery. What you know is criminalization doesn't work. You don't get recovery being on a jail cell floor. But you also don't get a recovery hanging out under the bridge or in the beach or your wooded areas. You don't get recovery out in the county. I was there last night where the fire occurred. You don't get recovery there. There's nothing good happening with that encampment that caught on fire a couple weeks ago. That doesn't get somebody out of homelessness. You go getting out of homelessness by getting a house while you're also getting deep, rich services to address your root causes of homelessness. Second is you need to build a holistic center. We talked about that about 7 years ago. Different, never got built, desperately needs to get built. You would probably benefit from a central kitchen. That's the number 3. Because you got a lot of feeding all over, some well-meaning, a lot of churches. You want to centralize that effort. You want to co-align it with the services. And you want to increase that with housing, which is 4. John covered a lot of that. I won't hit that unless there's Q&A. And then ideally, you want to locate the services, the feeding, and housing together. Ideally, you would like to put all 3 of those in one place in a holistic, because you get a higher success rate. You get a lower negative footprint, and so there's a lot of good that happens when you do that together. In the report, short-term, we've identified a place like 50 Maxwell would be a great short-term that doesn't give you housing, but it could give you services, and it could, if we can get a sort of interlocal agreement between the city and county. The county has a building there that might be a possible location for a kitchen. It's a warehouse. It looks like it's just holding stuff warehouse. It'd be about 15 feet away from the building. So that would be a short-term way to go. You get 2/3 of your problem addressed successfully, but you still got the housing. Someplace like 1750, the old state hospital that turned into the health department and such on Halifax, and I think that actually came from one of you all, is my understanding, that Lawrence took us out and looked at. That would be a long-term, that's sort of the home run, that, take longer to develop. There's a lot of challenges with that building, but that's one place where you could do all three in one location. 6 is sort of an inside baseball recommendation. It's taking a homeless management information system and move it more to case management. Some of the questions you were asking, if you can get real-time HMIS where it can get in, now you can get that information brought out and you can have real answers really quick rather than sort of summary reports that mask it. And then the 7th is, you all are starting to get big-time city problems. The county and city, you're starting to get the community problems that other bigger cities are having in Florida and the coastal area. And my prediction is I don't think they're going away. I think they're coming. You're already spending a lot of money on homelessness. At the police department, the sheriff, you're starting to get a lot more activity there. The ERs are starting to get more activity there. You're getting a lot of merchants. You're getting schools communicating about this issue. So there's a lot of costs already going there. What I think you would suggest is to start being much more proactive in figuring out where the logic, it'd have to be intergovernmental relationships and find opportunities to work together and to start structurally putting this in your budget rather than sort of reacting at an emergency level. So with that, that's my 10 minutes. And am I giving it back to Lawrence, or did you want to do Q&A questions?
Yeah, so I'm just going to go around the table, but I do want to be mindful of our time. So we only have about 45 minutes remaining for the meeting. We do have 2 more topics. I know we could spend all day on this topic. I believe it's something that we all want to tackle and address, so I don't want to try to shortchange us. I'm going to start with the Councilwoman Broughton, as she had some questions earlier. I'm just going to work my way around the table if you have anything. Okay.
My earlier question was, do we know how many among the population are actually city or county residents versus people who come to the city or county?
We don't know that, and at least I haven't found any data that I feel comfortable that I would, go back. One of my smaller suggestions in the report, you'll read it, is I think that'd be worthwhile to do a real quick 30-day deep dive into the unsheltered homelessness, because there's some information that HUD point in time doesn't give you, or it masks it. It actually may not cover it up, but you think you're measuring something you really aren't. And so I think you want to find out when people became homeless, where are they residents, where did they come from, how many are in the different mix. So there's some details in there that nobody has here. I think you can get that done in 30 days, and that's I put it in a other recommendations category in order to address exactly what you're bringing up.
Thank you.
And just for the record, I believe you are making a presentation to City Council next Thursday, based on this.
I don't know if it's Thursday
timeline.
or Monday. Yeah,
Monday, okay, it says the 27th, so, okay. So next Monday, so a week from today, you'll be in the same situation minus the 5 of us, but Councilwoman Myers?
Yeah, I'm looking at a video I took on March the 24th of last year with a group of 2 homeless gentlemen and a pit bull at a veterinarian that I paid to have put to sleep. It was the second dog at that particular veterinarian that belonged to homeless people. And I just wanted to say that I have worked with the homeless for 35 years. First as a legal aid attorney, but also working with Pets of the Homeless. If you have never heard of that organization, Pets of the Homeless, check it out. And I have worked with a lot of homeless people and their pets, and I don't agree with the analogy that the size of a pet indicates a level of violence in homeless population. Because I have dealt with a lot of homeless people and their pets. And so I think one of the things that we need to do is to be very mindful of how much pets mean to homeless people. And I'm hoping to put this video on my Facebook. I hesitated about doing it because it's so powerful, and I didn't want people to get upset at seeing what they are going to see on this video. But I think that homeless people should have the same rights everybody else has. And one of those rights is to be able to have their pets. I think that has a huge psychological benefit to people who are homeless. Sometimes it's the only thing they have. And so as part of what we're doing, I would like to see more free veterinary services for people who are homeless. I've offered to go into homeless camps and use my own discretionary money to help them get spayed and neutered and veterinary care. But when I heard you say that, I just don't agree with the size of the pet being an indication that there is violence in a camp or among a homeless population, because I don't believe that. And I don't want the animals being, labeled. Look at that animal. Well, that's a violent animal. It's there for self-defense.
Sorry, Ms. Myers, with all due respect, Ms. Myers, we're pressed on time, so.
We have to avoid stereotyping things if
Yes,
we
ma'am.
want to get things done.
Yes, ma'am.
And let me say, I agree with, I think, everything you just said. What I'm saying is, what we see around the country is when you see the big dogs get bigger, and when the dogs get more, that is an indication that people are feeling the comfort of needing animals more. Because I support animals. Every place I've ever built, I always create a kennel in a place with veterinarian services. So I think you and I are actually agreeing. And it's not the person who gets the dog that's violent. It's because they're feeling the violence. They're feeling the unsafe environment. That's why a higher need of both getting dogs and getting bigger dogs. It doesn't mean the person who has a bigger dog is more violent. That's not, and if I said it too quick, I'm sorry about that. What I'm saying is they feel so unsafe, they feel they need that.
Commissioner Underhill, did you have a comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the interest of time, not necessarily looking for an answer on a couple of these questions, if you could just email them to me where that's possible. I do want to tell you that I got elected in 2014. That was the beginning of my season of service. The Marbut Report of 2014 was one of the seminal documents for me addressing this issue and building my own thoughts. So thank you for your body of work. You said earlier that you're seeing an uptick in violence, particularly in stabbings. Can you provide the raw data that you had from that?
Yes.
Because that's outside of this.
Yeah, I'll get you some info.
Yeah, if you could shoot that to me, that's not what I'm hearing from some of our law enforcement, but so I just want to be able to correct that delta. And then, item 6, I was disappointed to hear you downplay your recommendation 6 about the HMIS, because I know from my support for getting HMIS in this county was in part because of your recommendation. It was, that was the driving force for it. So I would like to know, where did we go wrong? Or so we can be all touchy-feely about it. What do we need to do more right? Because I was under the impression that the HMIS was supposed to be able to give me these answers. It has certainly improved over where we were in 2014, but we are still not really, I can't really deconstruct the problem set based on the data that HMIS is giving me.
And I'll give a 20-second. Things have gotten better with many agencies, and because of John's direct intervention on it, HMIS is the only way you can get quick info. The downside is your largest operator is about ready to get off of HMIS, and they've already announced they're getting off. And so for HMIS to be worked, there are two critical things. You need universality, you need everybody involved, and you need real-time data. If you don't get either of those, you don't get it. And so I agree with you 100%, to a point where my recommendation, I think if you are not on HMIS, I don't think you should get funding. City funding, county funding, Continuum Care, United Way, I think you shouldn't receive funding if you're not going to work with the whole group.
So it's your recommendation that for organizations unwilling to work with us on HMIS and input their data, then they should not be receiving taxpayer dollars?
Yes.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, I certainly didn't, I thought HMIS is being pushed up. I mean, I think that's one of the things in the recommendation. That's a good thing. I wanted to say, I think we need to do something and begin to move the ball. Is everything perfect about what you're going to see? Is everything perfect going to be what we're doing? No, but it's better than where we've been, and we have seen. We had stabbing downtown at a restaurant probably 9 months ago. We had a significant number of slashing tires in downtown probably about 8 months ago. So we've had challenges, and I think we need to start moving in some direction to get there. Is everything here going to be perfect? I don't think everything's perfect, but I think it begins to move us in the down the line. And I think the group coming together that was talked about with John and Connie working together, I am so grateful for that. I know Lawrence has been very active in helping get that initiated, and we will continue to support that. I think these are good things, and I just ask that everybody work on trying to make a difference and not worry about being perfect at this time. We can always get better every day.
Council President Moore?
Yeah, just real quickly, obviously, building upon that, just happy to see that this ball moving, probably more resources than I can certainly remember in the community being devoted in this direction. Have a national leader here helping lead, obviously two very respected leaders in our local community. And I did want to mention as well, Mr. Michael Kimbrough, having him in the room, knowing that he's part of this team as well. I don't think anybody bleeds into this cause any more than he does. So I think it's certainly an encouraging moment as we stand here kind of plotting our course. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Bergosh.
Yeah, just briefly, first, thank you for being here. The area that the campsites where the fire happened was in my district. And folks in the district are very compassionate toward the plight of people that are homeless. They want to know how they can help, but you know they're concerned about some of the actions in these camps that create hazards. That subdivision came very, very close to being going up in flames. So the first question, two quick questions for you. Number one, this is something I wasn't aware of before I came into public service, but there is a percentage of these people that are homeless that want to stay homeless. Do you know in your research what that percentage is that will not conform, they will not follow any of the direction from the shelters, or what is the percentage of the people?
Technically, it's called shelter resistance, and generally it runs about 14 to 30%, and there's some variations of why and such, but it's a significant, sadly, it's also a growing number.
And then part two is the only other thing I get a lot of complaints about is the panhandling. We've discussed that. It was a campaign promise that I would bring it. I understand there's some First Amendment right issues along with that, but and I know that it gets conflated with grifters that are not homeless that just show up, park the car, and then they go get money. But what percentage of the homeless people, in your experience, engage in the panhandling? Because that is something that I do get a lot of complaints about. I get it. People they're down on their luck, but what percentage of the people that are homeless panhandle?
If you look at the unsheltered number, separate from the sheltered number, and separate from the families and children, those are different. So the just pure HUD-defined unsheltered would probably be nearly 100%, would be my guess. Panhandling, because that's how you fund your food, that's how you fund your alcohol, your drugs, your sex, other activity that goes on. And what I would encourage is, I think the best thing on panhandling is for you to change the culture, not really get a lot of ordinances, especially now because there's a lot going on in the Supreme Court. Now it'd be a waste of time because you'll probably get caught up in a lawsuit that eventually will go to Supreme Court. The best thing is to change your culture. Whoever's giving money out the window, if you're giving $1 a day, give $250 to Michael's operation. Absolutely. Or to Waterfront. Give it to a good running operation, or the new operation is going to get stood up at Salvation Army. If you want to fund all the negative bad habits, give money out the window. I mean, if you saw somebody that was on crack at a corner, would you roll up and say, hey, I see your crack pipe's not so good. Here's a little stylized crack pipe and here's a couple rocks for you. Would you do that? No, you'd say that's crazy. But when you give money out, all you're doing is funding that bad habit.
Right.
You have many places in this community that give out food. So food is not the issue here, especially if you centralize your activity. Giving money out the window, you might as well just give crack out the window or a six-pack out the window or pay for a prostitute. If that's what you think is a good, worthwhile investment, keep doing that. Or cut a $250 check to Salvation Army or to Michael or to the Waterfront. That's a much better investment than $1 a day out the window.
And I think we've used the line, a better way to give is the media campaign that we've used around here, so. Councilwoman Breyer?
Very quickly, I'm a little bit surprised that transportation is not a bigger portion of this. With homeless, like whether we give vouchers for transportation. I know that it was commented on that faith-based would concern themselves with transportation, but it seems like that is a really thing that hangs up a person to be able to get to the doctor or to a job, or I'm kind of surprised that was not mentioned in your.
Yeah, I didn't mention verbally, but I think it's on page 17 and 19. I go through a lot more details. When I say services, that would include ID recovery, transportation, proactive medical, primary medical care, vision exams. I'm amazed how many people on the street do not have proper glasses. So do you think we should have vouchers possibly, or for? Absolutely. Yeah, and you can do transportation a lot of different ways, and what you want to do is locate your facility first, then you fix transportation, because if you're on a bus line, you got it fixed. If you're not, you got to do it a different way.
Okay, thank you.
But it's definitely in 17, 18, and 19.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Hill?
Well, I wanted to thank you for bringing up 1750 Palafox Street. I hope everyone would go look at it because it is an amazing building with all kinds of potential. I think it's 4 stories where we could have offices and then transitional housing. The other thing is it opens up to one of the amazing stormwater areas that we have where it's ducks and all kinds of gorgeous life is over there with we could turn it into a walkway. Be a perfect location. Meanwhile, those that are on the street, CDC says don't move them around. We have them under the interstate right now. We've extended that. What is your feeling about temporary campgrounds while we don't have places to put people?
I'm no longer with the administration, so what I'm about ready to say doesn't represent the administration or the prior administration, but I've worked on those those guidelines with CDC. And what I think you're going to see is that's going to get lifted pretty soon from CDC, because as vaccinations go up, those recommendations were vital when you had very little mask wearing and you had no immunizations. The homelessness community, not everywhere, not all the places, but many parts of the country, actually have a higher vaccination rate than the general public because of groups, the very organized groups like Salvation Army, Union Rescue Missions, YUSA. They were very proactive. So once that gets lifted, I think you're going to start to see a lot of liftings now. Then you're going to have to address it at that time. But I don't think that's going to be much longer before that gets lifted.
Well, do you feel that we just let them go wherever they can hide, or do you think we should centralize an area for them that they can camp?
You absolutely have to centralize, but more important than centralize, you got to case manage that group. You have to get in, like under I-10, where the fire was. I was out there last night. These other encampments that are popping up along the railroad track, all that stuff listed on page 17, 18, and 19 needs to be done in case managed. Because if you don't, you're just going to let that grow and grow and grow and grow.
Thank you.
And Councilwoman Hill, I know with being on the DIB, I think they did a vaccine this past Saturday, the 16th. Where people could come in and do that. So we hope that it could, not just those that wanted to shop at the market, but anyone in the downtown area that needed it. So we were focused on that. Councilman Wiggins, do you have any comments? No, sir. Okay.
I have one thing to say.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much for this presentation. I appreciate your time. I also have to say, like, my spirit is making me say, the comment about crack out the window was insensitive.
About the what?
Crack out the window
Okay.
was insensitive. When I give $1, and I know when other people give their dollars, that's not our intention, and we don't want to label people who panhandle as crackheads.
And I don't, the reason why I give that as a personal thing.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I literally just came from a city that I was driving around with the mayor and the deputy police chief, and we literally drove out of my hotel into a church, and there was crack. It was literally a personal example, not from here, another Florida city that I just came from. So I've seen it firsthand. And so, but I appreciate the insensitivity that you might think of that, so I appreciate that.
All right, thank you very much. Pensacola Shipyard.
Thank you. I'm Chip Kirshenfeld, Deputy County Administrator. Robert Turpin brought this to our attention recently about a rare opportunity to purchase waterfront property on Bayou Chico. There's approximately 76 acres for sale, and I hope in your backup you have this packet of information. But there are many potential uses, and Robert, if you want to come forward and share with us many potential uses for this property, including a public boat ramp, hurricane haul-out for over 100 vessels. There are several existing tenants on the property now, so it is income-producing property. With the $12 million restore-funded Bayou Chico remediation project that you all are aware of to remediate the contaminated sediment in Bayou Chico, we're going to need a site for that remediation project, and this could provide that site also. So, Robert, if you want to please explain some of the benefits of this property.
Thank you, Chips, and thank you, Councilman and Councilwoman and Commissioners for this opportunity. I think Chip said it very well. In the interest of time, I'll just say that the strategic nature of this property, if we look at some of the recent utilizations of the property, such as Skanska's need for it for their construction, but really, when I think of where did we have the BP oil spill central location was on this site. And Chips was very, very correct when he said that if we're going to do the restoration of Bayou Chico, this site would be absolutely critical. And for two reasons. Not only would it be necessary spatially, but also the restoration of Bayou Chico is going to take an enormous amount of sediment, and the dredge material disposal are going to drive that cost of that project. And it's the rate of accumulation of that material that will drive the cost even higher. So if we own the property, we have the luxury of time for us to be able to do that project and do it right. Also, the Transmontane facility being the only fuel transfer facility in our community, being out there on Pensacola Bay, it would be in our strategic best interest if we had an opportunity to either increase that diversity into a protected water body such as Bayou Chico. This would give us the opportunity. Right now, it's a working waterfront, and the working waterfronts in the state of Florida are at a critical level of loss. They're being converted to other utilizations, and once we lose those working waterfronts, we don't get them back. So our seafood industries, our transportation industries, and then finally, I think it's the things that we're not even aware of today that we'll see a value in this. And marine transportation is the most fuel efficient way to move goods across this earth. And moving them across the water will occur in ways that we probably can't even imagine right now. But I'll leave you with this thought: if we take this opportunity and we make the best of it, we'll be very happy in the future. If we don't, I believe that we'll look at this opportunity with regret if we miss it.
Thank you, Captain Turpin. And just from my quick comments, real quick, I think, I know that some people have already contacted me about it. We're not looking to do away with the services that are here. It's more of a preservation of services, and making sure that we do continue to allow our waterfront to work, I think. I know Council President Moore and I were part of Tom Murphy's Civicon speech, where he talked about that's what Pittsburgh did. I know we already have a public boat ramp there, and we even talked earlier about how we could utilize the space if needed for fuel to come in after a storm, or given the recent light of events, we could have somehow utilized those services there. And so I'll go around the table and see if there's any comments. Other, real quick though, is that Commissioner Underhill, I believe that I saw an email from Matt Posner last week stating that we had received additional approval from the Gulf Consortium project for the repair and rehab of Bayou Chico.
Yeah, thank you for pointing it out. Don't want to take up too much time with patting on back, but if we're going to pat on backs, we need to pat on the appropriate back. In his commissioner role, the mayor was the driving force for making sure that the dredging of Bayou Chico was stayed front and center. And so to my four peers, thank you for continuing to keep it there with regard to that pot too. We're in great shape. The progress is being made at exactly the rate that we thought it would. It's not fast enough for anybody's satisfaction, but we've been eating that elephant one bite at a time. Thank you, Mayor Robinson, for your leadership on that during your time as the commissioner. As far as whether or not this is the best use, I mean, as with everything else, I always worry about how you're going to pay for it. We did have a Triumph ask that was put together by the UWF and IHMC to transform the Port of Pensacola into a tech port, where cyber meets the blue industries. There was a lot of merit in that. It didn't flesh out because of the city's goals with regard to the port, and so there's some things about this that might make it worth going back and reviewing some of the goals and objectives of that Triumph ask. And so I'm interested in it. At the same time, I'm somewhat scared about taking that much tax-producing property off of the public rolls. So unless we've got a good strategy for that, and we know how we're going to make sure that nets us back far more than we're taking out of the tax rolls, then that would be a hang-up for me. So
Sure,
thank you for your time.
And of course, Mayor Robinson was instrumental in standing up the Gulf Consortium, where he chaired it for a number of years. And so projects like this are what the consortium's doing all around the state of Florida. I would also, Councilwoman Myers?
Yeah, how much are we talking about funding? I see the funding sources, but how much are we talking about?
Their asking price is $600,000 an acre for the roughly 76 acres.
Which is
close to 50 million, ma'am.
I did the math.
Yeah.
How much?
Close to 50 million? So.
Well, I think that it's worth talking about and pursuing, but I was just wondering, because I didn't see a price in here anyplace, about how much it would be. Thank you.
Mayor Robinson?
I simply wanted to say, the blue industry thing did not happen because of the lack of desire on the city. We very much still thought that it was more of a position that came about from Triumph on some of the issues they had, but we'd love to see something back. It would have to be something like that to make this happen, because I don't think the city necessarily has the funds to do it, but I appreciate Robert and Chip's bringing this forward to Keith, and we're looking at it. I said, like I said in my press conference today, we are nowhere near had anything. This is just simply a discussion that was brought up from the county. I know there's some things that are dealing with that restoration, and we would, we're open doors to looking at it, but this is really early on a conceptual nature of what we're discussing. We really haven't even talked about it with council at any time, but I would think this would have to be something that came from a Triumph or something that would go in that direction, because I don't want council members thinking that somehow we have a source of money that's going to come up with this. It would have to be something outside of our normal every day, but it is worth investigating. Amy Miller's in the back. Talked with her about taking a look at the port, the seawall, and some of the other things to give me a report on her thoughts on cost. And I think I'm going to have to go find a water fountain.
Yeah, it's a waterfall.
Okay.
Well, I'm glad my colleagues at the city believe in math.
Well, I was going to say, I see that parcel 2, which is where Skanska is currently leasing the laydown yard, is only leased through January 2021, so hopefully that is an indication of when they'll be complete.
If you want to hang your political name on a date from Skanska, you go right ahead there.
No means, but at least they seem optimistic at this point. Councilwoman Hill.
Well, I think it's an amazing opportunity. This is the first time it's been up for sale that I can see. When have we ever had extra money to buy anything? And transforming this, hopefully with sensitivity to the progress that's going on the west side. We're getting more residential, we're getting more offices. We may not want to do heavy industrial, but maybe something that's compatible with that kind of growth. I can't see any negative about taking it over at all.
Yes, ma'am. Mayor Robinson, would you like to?
No,
Okay.
simply I was glad we paid our ECUA bill. They are here, at least we got some water out there.
All right. Any other comments from the board?
Very interesting.
Yes. So, again, just Councilwoman Hill, comment on your comments. I don't know how much development of industrial we'd be looking for, other than just to keep it working and retain access to the waterway. I know I had the opportunity to tour this facility about 2 years ago, and there were thoughts at the time where that was when the Mobile Bridge, I-10, was being discussed, and right now where the laydown yard is, it's one of the few precasting facilities that is in the Gulf of Mexico, and the possibility was a number of the firms that were bidding on that project actually came to look at that laydown yard to see if that's where they could precast some of the structures for that Mobile Bridge. And so there was hope that you could retain that. Of course, the jobs that it would take for that industry would be a huge impact for our community. But I think there's a lot you can do with this property, so appreciate the board's discussion on that.
Robert, if I may say, I want to put a bow in something that, as we look at this as a Florida working waterway, the greatest travesty that could happen to this property would be for it to become resort, condo, shopping center, convention center, anything like that. So I would hope that nobody is thinking fantasy thoughts like that. And if they are, just do a little research on what the Phase 1 and Phase 2 environmentals would look like. This is industrial property. This shall always be industrial property. And anybody thinking any other way is really riding a unicorn to work tomorrow.
Yes, sir.
I think the private sector could more than happily buy it right now. I think our only portion would be interested in working waterfront.
All right, thank you. And the last discussion for today is the American Creosote Remediation Site. And I think part of this, okay, Keith.
I think I've got that one. But just to wrap up the prior discussion, I hear that there's just a general consensus to go ahead and continue some fact-finding on the Pensacola Shipyard property, things like what are the funding, opportunities there and reuse opportunities, those sorts of things. So that's how, with the mayor and council president's concurrence, that's how city staff will move forward. And we'll keep county staff in the loop and look forward to their guidance also. With regards to American Creosote, the question came up regarding a permit that was issued by the city for a house to be constructed there, and this is an example of what recurs numerous times throughout the state of Florida and probably elsewhere. Contaminated soil is dug up. Well, a permit is issued from, in this case, our building department. Contaminated soil is excavated and hauled away in an uncontrolled manner. There's no testing done. There's no controls on the reuse of where that soil goes. And it is falls through the cracks. DEP would regulate that if it was known and reported as contaminated. In the case of this one, there's never been any official designation, no controls on the property, engineering or institutional controls, nothing on the title to the property. This was all sort of precursor to that, even though this has been known for 30 years. So the question came up of how can we avoid this? And I know it occurs in the county. I know it occurs in the city. It's been an issue that we've talked with DEP about for years. There's not a good connection between our building officials when we issue permits like this and DEP. Whereas I would just like to, the question came up from city and from county. I've tried to get information on a very short order with DEP on their websites, their data availability, and have not been able to draw that to conclusion yet. They do have a database called Oculus, but our building officials and the county's building officials, we don't go search that before we issue a building permit. Even to the point that there may have been remediation on the property, it may be capped, unless there is actual recordings on the title that don't dig here, we could very easily issue a permit to dig there. And we want to try to close that loop. Like I said, this is a statewide issue. I tried to address it somewhat when I was president of the Statewide Environmental Agencies Association. Just didn't get anywhere. It's a little too complex from a data management standpoint. But the question came up. That's what happens. That's what we're going to try to address and fix.
Mayor Robinson.
Keith, I thought American Creosote was still very much on the issue of trying to take some of the dirt from there and relocate it because of the cap we have, because we have such a low water table there that we've got to do something with it or else we end up building high. There is still, at the Escambia treating site, there's still the original hole that is there, and I thought we were trying to get dirt to that facility to be part of the capping there.
That's another issue also, yes, is I believe that our last conversation with the county kind of put a cap on that, but that is a question with the amount of soil that's being generated at American Creosote and the big hole that exists at Escambia Treating. Is there some opportunity there to benefit both sites? That's correct.
And I think EPA and DEP are willing, if there can be some kind of agreement between the city and the county, and rather than have to build up because we have nowhere to go at American Creosote, to create a cap that is essentially overlooking and dominating a neighborhood. Is there a way for us to work in two ways? Because the hole that was the original Escambia treating source area has got to be filled. And if there was an ability to put those two together and cap it and at least allow us to have some position at right there at Sanders Beach, not to have to build up and create a cap that was above the level of the homes and everything else. We don't have any outside of the bluffs. We don't have any necessarily hills right by the water. So unfortunately, the circumstances that surround American Creosote, if we could find a way to work together and remove some of that dirt from there, that would help.
Correct. The goal would be to keep the elevation of that cap as low as possible.
Yeah, and I think the discussion we had in the pre-meeting here was that we'd try to get some type of overlay that might be able to identify which properties have a do not dig or would need to be made aware of that. I would say my first concern would be putting contaminated soil onto the location on Palafox, just because it's already gone through remediation and that process.
But you still have the hole, which has not been treated yet. And so you've got contamination there, you're gonna have to treat it. Why wouldn't you help fill it with some other contaminated soil that's the same type of contaminated creosote?
Sure. Councilwoman Britt.
But right here, this one was the most immediately dangerous to the residents there, that there was no highlight. We don't have an overlay for our county city, so that when these properties that are was disrupted and nobody was warned, then this tree was removed and taken and ground into general population that one of you might have dumped under your playground. I mean, we don't know where this went, and that's how dangerous we're very aware when we do this kind of disruption to soil that we know what's going on. I mean, this should have been such an easy one. This was a hot topic area that there should have been some alert. But we've got so many around our county that we really need to better protect our residents.
Yes, ma'am.
I mean, it's,
Towards the purchase of the property?
yeah, I
Yes,
mean,
sir.
let them just keep working forward until we get much further along. I mean, it would take, just candidly, I mean, it would take a tremendous amount of other people's money to even make this.
Create jobs there. It may make sense. It may make sense on paper, but that is not something I could ever support. If we need help getting it up to our lined landfill and properly stored into something, we can do that. But that area, the Escambia Treating Superfund site, that will not take a step back on my watch. We're not putting anything else dirty in there on my watch. That for my vote anyway. Thank you.
American Creosote facility and that Superfund site, there are uncontrolled releases into the environment of contaminated soil, some of it on private decision. There is an approved remediation plan that the Environmental Protection Agency has published. The problem is there are no federal funds in the Superfund program to do the remediation project. So Keith and I were speaking with an environmental reporter that just published an article on this site recently, and she mentioned that there were other local governments that had fronted the money to do the remediation, to do the cleanup, to get the uncontrolled releases out of the environment, to be reimbursed by another topic that Keith and I just wanted to add to this.
Thank you. Councilwoman Hill?
Well, do we have any idea of what kind of upfront money you would need to remediate that?
The estimate from the record of decision was about $35 million, and that included several projects, one being a slurry wall that would stop the contaminated groundwater from flowing down toward Bayou Chico. Others projects are removing the contaminated soil from people's front yards, their residences. So there are different parts of that, different pieces of that could be done.
Could we do seepage into the water or wherever it's going to needs to be stopped? I mean, that's just has to be done.
Yeah, honestly, all of it needs to be done, yes,
Yeah,
ma'am.
well, but we could front part of it, maybe.
Well, I think that we're this bayou right here. It came through East Hill, they tested it under here. I believe they weren't sure exactly where it went at this point, so we've got it at this water right here. And we're adding more and more water sports here. I mean, we've really gotten away from remembering these legacies that we need to deal with before we really go full force in making this a water sport location. I mean, we've got a lot hanging over our head here with these Superfund sites.
I don't disagree, but I'd also like to say I think we've also made great strides with the work that Mayor Robinson did as county commissioner and the work in this waterway.
That. But when you're talking dioxin and some of these chemicals that have half-lives that are so extremely out there, I mean, it's still hanging over us. I'll tell you what, I had a student who grew up right here, and he had bone cancer, and the doctor said that was because he dabbled in this water. He's a young man. I mean, he's young. It's still got a legacy over us that we really need to deal with.
Sure. Not seeing any other hands raised or anything. We're inching in here.
Yep.
Council President Moore, I would like to turn it over to you, but first I'd like to thank you for hosting this in District 4. In the new facility, of course, it's great for the residents of this area and the city of Pensacola to have this facility open and available for them to use, for our use. So we thank the city of Pensacola for hosting. And I'll turn it over to you for some final comments.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thrilled to have everybody here and enjoy this great facility. Obviously with this this incredible view. I know the mayor usually likes to take credit for the weather, but I guess since it's a joint meeting, we get to share credit for the good weather. I don't know. Did hear we're at 100% drawings on some of these repairs out here, so continuing to look better and brighter. Otherwise, we're up against a hard stop, and we got more work to do, and you got a ball game to get to, so anyways.
Play ball.
Good to see you.
Okay. Thank you, everybody.